Yeah, morning everyone, môre almal. Thank you to Landbou Weekblad for hosting me and inviting me to speak today. Thank you to Hendrik Smith and to Andrew Ardington. They did a lot of arm twisting to get me up on the stage, and thank you for doing it and pushing me out my comfort zone. Yeah, today I'll be speaking about interseeding, our journey, where we started, where we are, what we've learned, and give back a little bit. Who are we? What do we do? So I farm with my dad. I've been back on the farm with him since 2015. He's 5th generation on the farm, myself 6th. You can see my son there, he's 7th. We farm in the Eastern Free State, just outside Harrismith. Yeah, on the Fakkekerskop Road. We do cropping and beef. We do maize and soybeans as the main crops. We do a few others, doing a trial with sunflowers this year. Yeah, on the beef side, we do boerfolders. Yeah, I've come a long way with the boerfolders. My grandfather was one of the first members of the study group. My dad followed not long after. He was actually my grandfather was one of the pioneers, and yeah, we've come a long way with the boerfolders, and they have adapted nicely to our system. Yeah, and we farm dryland, 100% dryland, so no irrigation. So what is interseeding? With regenerative agriculture comes a lot of new terminology, things we don't really understand. What's the meaning of interseeding? The way we see it is a practice we use to plant cover crop between an existing crop that is already in its growth stages. Here's just a video just so you can have a look to see what is interseeding. So this is our piquet planter. You'll see here we plant twin rows of cover crop between a row of millies. Our spacing on our maize is 91 centimeters. Let's chat a bit about the theory, what do we do, how do we do it. So basically at V4, V5, for those of you who don't know what V4, V5 is the growth stage of the maize. So you could roughly, as you can see in the photo, it's about knee high. That's when we come in with a planter, we plant our cover crop seed. Yeah, so that's step 1. Step 2 will be try get good germination before canopy. During the canopy stage, I'd say that's step 3. There's a few different things happening. We plant a mixed species in the cover crop. Each thing's got its own function. Each thing's got its own purpose. And then step 4, I'd say that's harvesting. That's really when something special happens. That's when basically when your cover crop takes off. And then yeah, we come in a bit later with the cattle to graze. This is just another video of this is our home built planter. This plant is planting 3 rows of cover crop between a row of maize. And there he goes, our piquet on the other side. So I try to keep the 2 planters in the same land, finish the land, and then we move on to another land. So it'll be a nice comparison this year to see the difference between 3 rows and 2 rows. So why did we start interseeding? Basically, when I got back to the farm, we expanded our cropping side of the farm. My dad was mostly a cattle farmer that planted a few crops. My passion is basically diesel, you could say, tractors, planting, green fingers. So when I got back to the farm, we expanded on the cropping side quickly, yeah, and basically looked at what the neighbors were doing next door and kind of copied them. And yeah, not long after that did we realize we're not on the right track. We've got to change something here. Yeah, I mean, maize at that stage, yeah, our input costs are very high. Yeah, profit, it wasn't paying us to plant maize. We're basically planting maize for cattle feed in winter, and it's a high risk, high input. So we got to a stage where it just wasn't profitable to plant maize anymore, and we said, well, we've got to come up with plan B. If you're going to sit with your accountant or your bank manager, he's going to tell you you've got to plant more hectares, economy of scale. What do you have to do to plant more hectares? You've got to borrow more money, you've got to buy bigger equipment, it's more management, it's more risk at the end of the day. We said, no, well, we're not keen on doing that. We're comfortable with what we've got. Let's do another plan. So I said, well, instead of expanding our hectares, let's focus on vertical profit, not horizontal profit. So what I mean by that is instead of chasing hectares and chasing your tail to make a profit, well, let's try to build the farm upwards. Let's make a double story, triple story. So we focused on a vertical profit-driven system, and that's what kind of led us into the way of interseeding and going on a regenerative approach. We put a bit less focus into soil sampling. As you can see, well, I'm going to show you a video and 2 videos now, and you can see why I say we put less focus on soil sampling. We had bigger problems we needed to solve first. Yeah, we were driven to see different results, and it's pretty simple. If you want something different, you got to do it differently. So that's what we did at the end of the day. Yeah, we plant every hectare on the farm twice a year in the Free State on dry land. So basically, we're planting a cover crop, cash crop. So that was a video of us planting maize when we were still doing the conventional way. We'd literally just finished planting that land, and we got a downpour, and you can see where all that water and your fertilizer and seeds going. The next video I'm going to play was a dust storm that's coming over in planting season. And since that year, it comes every year, that dust storm. It's, yeah, something scary. Can you imagine how many tons of soil are flying in the air there? How much lime is going? So by those videos, what I mean by we didn't focus on soil sampling too heavily. We obviously still do soil sampling, but yeah, at that stage, I don't know, it didn't make sense to me why lime and it's all going to blow in the air and go to the neighbor or down to Natal, or it's going to land up in the dam. How we started, YouTube, and more YouTube. Yeah, watch lots of YouTube videos, lots of late nights. My wife says, "What on earth are you watching?" I said, "No, YouTube. Basically, you get bitten by this little regenerative bug. It bites you, and yes, it takes you to places, makes you learn stuff you would have never learned before. I don't like reading, I must say. The amount I've read in the last few years is definitely a lot more than I read at school. Watched a lot of videos, learned a lot. So how did we start? Obviously, try to learn as much as possible from YouTube. Change our chemical program slightly. Andre, our chemical rep, said today, I've given him, I'm sure, plenty of headaches, a lot of sweat. So we bought that first, so that piquet plant you saw earlier, that wasn't our first one we got. The first one we got was slightly different. We actually helped piquet in designing this one. That works very well for us. Yeah, so we bought a planter, and we kind of went into it just wildly and planted. Some lands work, some didn't work. We got a lot of it wrong. But yeah, it's like when you lose a rugby match, you go back to the drawing board. What can you do better next time? What can you change? So we did that, and then from there we've just been building every year. This is our old Bramley that was lying in the shed, and I thought, well, the piquet was a little bit slow, it wasn't getting hectares in, so I thought, well, let's get this old planter out, give it a shot and see how it works. So that photo there at the bottom, that's our first year of interseeding. You'll see a little bit later how the soils changed. So that was the last year we tilled heavily, and then from there we've been on a minimum till, no till system. So how is it going at the moment? Yeah, so we've in the last 2 seasons got every hectare of maize interseeded before Christmas. Our maize yields have been climbing since we've started, which is a good thing. We've actually increased our carrying capacity on the farm. So my dad said basically before we started cropping we were 1 on 3. When we started cropping conventionally we were 1 on 2.5, and we're currently on 1 on 2.3 at the moment. So yeah, obviously still a lot of work to do, but it seems to be going in the right direction. Yeah, and I must say, it's funny to say on the farm, but our winters have almost become easier than our summers for the cattle for grazing now, for food's sake. The 6 points of regenerative agriculture. So I'd suggest anyone that's starting today, if you want to go back to your farm and just do one thing, just focus on anything there is on that, of those 6. If I could suggest something, start with number 6, context. Where are you based? What do you do? What system are you going? Everyone's system here will be different. I'd focus on that, and then from there, try to tick the boxes. So over the years that we've started interseeding, we've managed to tick each box off individually. My go-to mix, I wouldn't suggest planting all of that. If you want to, you can, it'll work. But then your cost of seed runs through the roof a bit. Just keep it simple. I'd say the magic in interseeding and cover crops for us in the Free State, I'd say it's stooling rye is yes, it's a magic plant. Yeah, and then there's a few other things you could add there, something like veg, but I didn't want to write it there in case someone plants it and then, yeah, it can crawl up the maize, it can be a headache trying to harvest it, and for follow-up crops, yeah, I didn't want anyone fluking me at the end of the day. You could also look at something planting like a perennial, a clover in between there, but all depends on your rotation, so it goes back to context at the end of the day. Lessons learned, timing. What I mean by timing is, yeah, you obviously got to get into your maize at the right time. You don't want to plant too early and get a allelopathic effect on your maize. So timing's pretty important, and then I'll put time there. Yeah, you've got to get a move on to get your stuff in. You've got a very tight window. I like the saying in Afrikaans, jy moet jou gat roer, and that's literally what you've got to do with interseeding. You've got to move. Yeah, we plant, I've said already, we plant on a 91 centimeter width on our millies. On soybeans, we plant a few different widths, but we don't plant anything on a 91 centimeter. So that planter just plants millies, and then the other planters carry on with soybeans. So with the interseeding, we've seen that it helps us hugely in August, September. Obviously, that time of the year is when winter really kicks in the Free State. It's dry. There's not much food around. The wind howls. It's pretty hectic. Yeah. Also, another thing we've seen in August and September, I said about the wind factor. You know what it's like. Most of your cover in your land just blows away. It all sits on top of the fence. With interseeding now, we've noticed that it holds your cover in the land, even with the cattle walking up and down. For some reason, I'm not exactly sure how, but yeah, we've got a lot more cover staying in the land. Cattle have got a lot more to eat. So, yeah, with runoff and infiltration, our infiltration rate's gone way through the roof. There's not much runoff of the lands anymore. Nothing like the video I showed you before. As I said, they're clean dams. As they said at the one point yesterday, Darnie's dams, they're clean, but they're not the fullest dams. We've seen the exact same by us. We've got quality water in the dams, but not quantity anymore. By interseeding, we've managed to make less bales. We're only making a fifth of what we originally used to. So all those Eragrastis and Smutsvinger lands, we've actually put into our cropping system now. So before it used to be a huge input cost, we've actually made it into a profit now. And then by then we've managed to reduce our bales that we make. We still bale. Not to say that, I'm not saying anything you mustn't make bales. You will always need bales. I've already said a bit about the increased carrying capacity. So we've increased our carrying capacity, made less bales, got more food for the winter. We've got a live root. I said there, we've picked up a live root can build your soil a lot quicker than just cover. The two together obviously works hundreds. On the interseeding one thing we've picked up, interestingly this year I changed my interseeding mix a little bit. I didn't put purple top turnip and radishes in there. And I've noticed our worm pressure on our maize has been a lot higher than the last 2 years. I believe it's because we left those two out. Last year the worms flattened the radish and the turnips, and I was getting a bit frustrated. But I've seen this year, next year I'm going back that way, and they're more than welcome to club the radish and the turnip and leave the millies alone. What are we trying to do at the end of the day? We're trying to build a drought-resistant soil. So, yeah, just a bit of feedback from this past season. We had snow in winter. October we had about 10 or 15 mils, got started with the planting for 2 weeks. 2 weeks there wasn't any follow-up rain. It was getting really touch and go, and I kept saying to my dad, I'm just going to plant one more land. I see there's just enough moisture in that land to carry on planting. Finish that land, and I'd say to him, well, let's just send a planter to another land. I just want to go test. I think I carried on and did about 5 lands. And I could see him, he's half looking at me like, you crazy. And I said, well, moisture's there, we may as well carry on. Finish those lands, rain came the following week, and yeah. So I guess that's why we changed our way of farming for those conditions. We had an extra week of planting on top of all the other guys that had stopped because of moisture. The photo on the top left, I'd say it's about 15 kilometers away from our farm, a neighbor. I took that photo on the 5th of August. That's what his maize land that had maize stalks looked like. And I must say most of his lands already look like in August. And you know, in the Free State, the real winter starts in September. So yeah, the bottom photo, bottom left, that was me driving back home. I just took a photo there, same day. That was actually where the cattle were strip grazing in the lands. They were moving out of that strip the following day. So you can just see the amount of cover we were able to leave there. The middle 2 photos, that's on our hired farm. We hire the whole farm, so we've got control of planting the lands as well as grazing the lands. So it makes sense for us to interseed there. That was the first season I interseeded on that farm. As you can see, there's not much cover crop. But yeah, the thing with regenerative agriculture, you got to keep pushing through. Don't just think everything's going to fall in place in the first season. Yeah, 2 seasons later, that's the exact same spot I took the first photo, and you can see the cover crop, how it's doing at the moment. That was taken about a month ago, that photo. Yeah, the other 2 photos, what our planting season used to look like. Yeah, heavy tillage. Yeah, and then the bottom photo was this last season. You can still see where the maize stalks are. You can see the interseeding that's regrown. We're planting directly into that. You can also notice we plant We take different angles every year we plant. We never plant on a straight line every year. That's our little bit of tilling, if you could put it that way. We still got tines on our planters, so we just offset the angle slightly every year. So this time last year, 14th of March, on the hard farm, it was quite hectic. It was dry. I'll just play this video for you. You can see the cover crop, it was basically hardly non-existent there. It was holding on. As you can see by the maize leaves, there's not much moisture left in the profile. Fortunately, the maize was basically through. Cobs were slightly small, but there was a crop at the end of the day. And that's what was in the cover crop. The next video was the exact same land while we were harvesting on there on the 29th of May 2024. So it just shows you that cover crop's a bit of an insurance for you at the end of the day. Even though you have a dry season, you get some late rain, you've got another opportunity of still growing something. So it was almost backup feed for the cattle at the end of the day. As you can see, the combine's wheels almost drive directly on top of the stalks. So our top guard drivers, we try most of the time. They also try driving the same track just to save the cover crop. Here and there we do squish cover crop, but I mean, it's also good for the soil if it gets squished and doesn't get chowed by the cattle, so it's a win-win either way. The bottom photo was the same land after we had grazed in winter. This is the cover crop that had regrown again. So it had been through the drought. After harvested, we grazed it quite heavily. We grazed the hired farm a little bit heavier than at home, just because our management's slightly different there. So that's what came back. So how do we graze our stalks? We strip graze every hectare of our stalks. So our maize we interseed. After soybeans, we drill a cover crop. When the cover crop's also at about knee high, we start grazing it. Yeah, how many strands all depends on what herd's busy grazing there at the time. So if we put in like heifers or bulls, we'll work on one strand, live wire. If we see they're being naughty, we'll move to two. When we put cows with calves, newborn calves on the lands, you know what a newborn calf is like. It wants to run back to where it was born. And you can imagine what it's like with two strands. They strangle themselves and pull the whole fence. So there we just work off one strand, make it high enough that the calves can go underneath, but the mothers have to stay where they are. Gerard said yesterday how important water is. Yeah, we've seen that in the last few years. We're not quite there with our water yet. We're still transporting water to a few lands, but we try to keep the water as close as possible to the land. And really what we're wanting is to get a high concentration of dung, urine, and saliva on the lands. I actually spoke to Andrew the other day. He says, a rough calculation, for a tractor to drive and cart water to your lands, instead of doing that and you put a pipeline in, you can pay that pipeline off within 2 years. So it's something to consider. So if we are running out of stalks and cover crop, we obviously got the few bales we do make. We do put them on the side of the land. It's just a little bit of extra bulk for the cattle to eat. It just gives you that much longer to get through to the end of winter. And then, yeah, remember what you do this season is setting next cash crops foundation now. So, yeah, you're setting next year's potential in the season that you're grazing now. This is just a video I had of some cows. I can't remember if it was cows or heifers. I think it was actually heifers on the stalks. And there's the live line there. So basically we try aim at no longer than 2 days on a strip and we move. Ideally what we'd like is to leave too much cover and get through all our lands, and if need be, if we get a late rain and we don't have food, we'd rather go back and graze a bit more, and if we do get rain and we can move off, and then we've won on the cover side. Simple sums, I haven't put any numbers in there, but it's just things to consider. Everyone's going to have their own system, etc. So our maize yields are climbing. It's allowed us to make less bales. And then obviously all those camps that we used to make bales, that's now in the cropping system. So the cattle, they're getting through winter easier. So I wouldn't say they're gaining weight through winter, but they're maintaining their weight. So basically by strip grazing is what in the old days we used to chase the cattle into the stalks. They'd stay there for probably a month. So first week I'd say they select graze all the lacquer stuff, so they're on a high. from then on, they're basically just surviving. So it's like sending a kid into a sweet shop. They're obviously going to try the lacquer sweets first and leave all the worst ones for last. So that's the reason why we strip graze, is for the benefit of the cattle as well as the crops. Yeah, cattle are coming out the winter. Our staff actually came and said to us, we had cattle that are coming off the stalks and cattle that came off a winter cover crop back onto the veld. They actually said to us, check the difference in the condition in the cattle that came off the stalks as opposed to just the ones off the winter cover crop. So yeah, I mean, if the staff can see things like that and they give you feedback, it's always lacquer. It's also allowed us to put less lick in the winter. It's food for August, September. You know in August, September what it's like in the Eastern Free State. There's not much chow around. So whatever's there, it's really valuable. It allows us to build our cover, allows us to build a healthy soil. The live roots, they act like solar panels, they're feeding energy, keeping the microbes going, and then we try, as much as possible, try to use our own seed. Yeah, they say that your seed over time eventually adapts to your soil, and the DNA knows what your soil, what the seed and the soil basically communicate to each other. The other thing I actually forgot, saying simple sums, my dad actually said to me the one day, well, even if it doesn't pay, we're going to carry on doing it, because you come back from Harrismith, August, September, everyone's moaning, there's no more water left, there's no feed left, the cattle are skinny. You drive into the farm, Andrew can also tell you a story, the first time they got there in the middle of winter, it's dusty in the Free State, the wind is blowing. The next thing you drive into this little piece of paradise, it's green, the cattle are full, there's water, and I must say it's quite something too special to see a farm that's green in winter. This was our, I like to call it the Verkijkerskop special, our Brambly, that we've modified, I think every year since we've started. So 2 years ago we did a serious modification on it, and this is just a small video I put together of us building it. We basically steal the units from another planter that's got better downforce, better soil penetration, and then it's just the seed bin that's from the Brambly and just the original frame where it hitches onto the tractor. So what's in the tanks and the planters? If neighbors are driving past, they don't want to know what we're planting, why we're planting. It's always, what's in your tanks? What's in your tanks? So I said, well, if I tell you, I might have to kill you. But I'll tell you today, I promise I won't kill anyone. Yeah. So basically what we're doing is putting a whole lot of biological products in there. We're buying products from Macarios. Yeah, so a lot of stuff. It's fulvic acid, humic acids, fish hydrolysate, different types of seaweed, sugars. So basically what we're wanting to do is stimulate the biodiversity in the soil. This is also to ensure that the plant biome is getting a support that it needs from a good start. So basically what we're doing on soils that have got not the correct pH, if there's chemical residues, we're basically just buffering that little zone where the seed gets its best shot. So you know what it's like, if a millie comes out the soil strong, you know that your potential is very good from day one. Basically that's what we're trying to achieve, as well as with the cover crop, giving it the best start as possible. So we're obviously aiming for good root formation. Good root formation means that the plant can grow, can go look for nutrients, and it just increases the photosynthesis. And the fertilizer that you do use on your cash crop just allows, I didn't mention it earlier, but we also got infrared applicators on all our planters. So on a cash crop, it just allows the plant to really utilize the fertilizer that we're putting in to the best of its ability. Yeah, we've got a few things that we're lining up that we also would like to put in there. We're going to look at trying to do some Johnson Sioux, mix that in also into the tanks, and then we're playing around with some other things on the farm. But yeah, it's still early days. I haven't got really much feedback on that. And yeah, that's all I've got to say today. And that's all shorty there. That's the biggest turnip we've found still to date in Interceding. I want to kick myself for not weighing it, but yeah, it probably looks a little bit bigger than it is. Because shorty is not the biggest chap, but yeah, we've had some good fun with the staff over the years. A short story about one of my dad's old drivers. He's actually my grandfather's driver first. The first time we had our little no-till plant on the farm, and I hooked it up and I said to him, let's go plant some cover crop into the weeds. We got to the land and I said, well, what you waiting? Let's get planting. He says, he's not planting. I said, why? He says, no. If this stuff doesn't come up, then it's his fault. I said, hey, plant the stuff. Eventually I got on the tractor, did the first 2 strips, gave it to him, and he planted. a few weeks later, we went back and the stuff was standing beautifully, and he says, okay, now he's willing now, he'll carry on planting the next time. So, yeah, push through, show the staff that it works. Your first season's obviously going to be your toughest one, but push through. I promise you, at the end of the day, you'll find a system that works for you, and yeah, thank you very much.